So, Zach Snyder. A lot of people love him. A lot of people hate him and want to see his guts strung across the Hollywood sign. Me, I kinda like him. I liked Watchmen. Yes, I've also read the comic. Yes, you may now crucify me down in the comments. And it's pretty clear that he cares a lot about his movies. He's clearly got a lot of passion for his work. But it's a little hard to deny that he isn't exactly at the best track record over the last decade.
Save Martha!
Yeah, I know it's an overused clip, but may I suggest that maybe it's overused because it's just that dumb. And I feel like the Great Snyder War reached a bit of a climax with Rebel Moon because, as you've probably heard if you've
checked the internet lately,
they're kinda terrible. I watched part 1 when it came out because I wanted to see if it was actually that bad. And also I wanted to see if, I could make a video out of it. Yeah, I'm a greedy bastard. So what? But I did also kinda hope that it would actually be, good, or at least fun. So was it actually any fun? Yeah, I guess, but it was indeed also pretty terrible. In my opinion. But well, I scrapped that video, but now the director's cut is out, and like a murderer, I'm returning to the scene of the crime by making this video. So let's just get into it, and I'll tell you how the director's cut differs, and if it's actually any better. And I'll also give you my opinion on both Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2. Huh? What the hell's going on out there? Attention all inhabitants of this planet, you will submit to this channel and like, comment, and subscribe, or else you will be annihilated by orbital bombardment. Well, that can't be good. What am I gonna do about it? Now, I am gonna condense the plot a lot, because the director's cut is 3.5 hours long. And I would rather not edit a 2-hour video, so I'm gonna be skipping a lot of stuff, but trust me, you're really not missing out on much. So the first difference between the regular version and the director's cut is actually the opening. The normal version just opens up with some narration from Anthony Hopkins. It's pretty boring. The director's cut instead just throws us right into the action as the Empire, the Mother World, is conquering a planet to hunt down some rebels. Sound familiar? The administrator of the planet is confronted by Atticus Noble, the guy who the Mother World sent out to find the rebels. He's the big bad guy of the movie. Now I want you to imagine the worst person ever, like somebody who has absolutely no redeeming qualities. Yeah? You got it? Alright, well he's worse. The administrator begs him to let his family live, which Noble's totally willing to do, of course, because he's a reasonable guy. As long as the son kills his own dad. And if he doesn't, then Noel will just kill all of them anyways. So to save his mom and sisters, the son kills his dad, but Noble's a bastard and then just kills them anyways. Well, except for the son. He doesn't kill the son. Oh yeah, Noble's also got memory powers. He can read people's memories by fingering their brains. Does it come up again? No. Does it matter in any way at all? No. But I think this opening is way more interesting than the regular version's opening, but it's not perfect. It's 15 minutes long for one, which is just a little bit painfully long. And there's also some dumb moments like the dad sending this little monkey guy to kamikaze the soldiers, but I like it a lot more than the Anthony Hopkins ASMR that we got in the regular version. Now, I've also got to give the movie this. It looks really good. Yeah, it's a CGI shitfest, but it's a very pretty CGI shitfest. Though the CGI does kinda look like a PS2 cutscene a lot of the time, which I guess isn't that much of an insult because those cutscenes hold up pretty well, but it still looks a little funky next to live action actors. And it's also like the editor threw on every filter they could find. There's just constant lens flare and there's this weird fisheye lens look to the entire movie, but overall, it looks pretty great. The backgrounds are also pretty good. You really get a feel for how all these places are different, and I just really like the aesthetic of the movie. It's like if you combine medieval fantasy with World War I and II, sprinkle in some Roman and Victorian aesthetics, and put it in space. Overall, I think it looks pretty good. So then we cut to our actual main character, Kora. She's a fugitive hiding from the Mother World who crash-landed on a planet called Velt and was taken in by a village of knockoff Swedes. And this is Gunnar. played by Daario Naharis, who probably also crash-landed here after escaping from Game of Thrones before it completely shat the bed. He's not cool anymore though. Now, he's a simp. So the director's cut doesn't really add anything here, well, except for
Sex.
there's a scene added here. That's the only real difference. It's really long for some reason. That's it. After that scene, we get a scene of her talking with her adoptive daddy. Stereotypical old Swedish guy tells her she should marry so she can be fully integrated into the community, but Kora tells him that she's a child of war and that she's not even sure if she's capable of love. And this is the first scene where I noticed this movie's big problem. It just tells you what the characters and themes are supposed to be instead of actually showing you. Kora literally just summarizes her character and what her arc's gonna be instead of showing us through how she acts and how she talks to people. And yes, there's a little more to her backstory than what she says here, but for the most part, this scene tells you everything about her, and that's gonna be a running theme. I'll just skip ahead to when the soldiers of the Mother World show up. They're here because they're running low on food, so they want the village's grain. So I'll skip past Noble pretending to be a good guy, which doesn't really make sense in the director's cut because the movie's already revealed that he's a massive asshole. I skip straight to when he bashes the village elder's skull in.
I don't understand what you want.
Well, it's simple. I want everything.
Yep, we get it. That's like your entire character. So Noble then leaves because the harvest isn't ready yet and cause he's gotta hunt down them rebels. So he leaves some soldiers behind to keep the village in line. Also, there's a robot. He's gonna be important, so don't forget him. That night, Kora tries to sneak away because she's got more false accusations against her than Dream, but the soldiers try to violate a girl because they're evil soldiers, what else did you expect? And Kora's our main character, so she's obviously gonna stop them. The son from the opening is also there because he was forced to become a soldier, and he's not a complete psycho, so he tries to stop the soldiers, but the rest of them are complete psychos, so they grab him and tell him that they're gonna force him to watch. Then Kora walks in, kills all of them, and the robot has a soul apparently and kills the leader. Then the robot runs out of the movie. At least in the original version, he straight up just disappears from the movie after this. But in the director's cut, we get some extra scenes with him, which I'm gonna completely skip because they're pointless and nothing really happens in them. So now that Kora's killed the soldiers, it's pretty obvious that they're gonna have to fight, so Kora goes to find the rebels. She also takes Gunnar with her because he sold grain to the rebels last year. We get a scene of her telling Gunnar her backstory, and when I say a scene, I actually mean that this takes up about 10 minutes of the movie. It's a little shorter in the normal version, but it's still pretty long. Basically, the Mother World invaded her planet, killed her parents, though for some reason the soldiers didn't kill her. It's been pretty well established that the soldiers don't have any morals. I mean, they're killing unarmed civilians, and it's not like Kora was hidden, so why didn't they just kill her? But anyways, Kora grabs a gun and goes out onto the streets. Then she runs into Belisarius, the current regent of the Mother World, who was just a general at the time. Belisarius tells her to set him free, so she pulls the trigger, but nothing happens. And I guess Belisarius goes, "Yep, you seem like a perfect little psycho in the making. I'm gonna take you home." So he raises her as his daughter, but why she fled from the Mother World isn't explained yet. There's a lot I want to say about this, but I'm gonna keep that for later. They arrive at the port city just in time to conveniently see that their contact is getting captured by bounty hunters and this stupid capture drone that I hate because it looks dumb and I hate it! Sorry about that. So they go into the bar and some gross alien render comes up to them and goes,
"I like you, and I want you. Now we can do this the easy way, or we can do it the hard way."
Gunnar would rather not have his mouth turned into a glory hole, so the hard way it is. Kora's a badass though and beats up the gross alien a little bit and he scrams. Then she immediately ceases to be a badass cause for some ungodly reason, she just stands up and asks everyone if they know where the rebels are. And this is beyond stupid for a couple reasons. 1. You're in a random shitty bar / brothel. Why the f do you think that anybody here knows where the rebels are? 2. It's been pretty well established that the Mother World is trying to hunt down the rebels, and considering that your contact was literally just taken by bounty hunters, there's a pretty good chance that if somebody does help you, they're just another bounty hunter that either wants to hand you over to the Mother World because they think that you might be worth something, or because they think that you can lead them to the rebels. free. People would probably just assume you're also a bounty hunter, so anyone that's actually helping the rebels would either just not tell you, or they'd kill you. But some random Metroid ripoff tells them that they can find General Titus in the Colosseum on Pollux. But then the Reddit alien comes back with some buddies to kill them, so obviously we get a bar shootout scene. And this is where you'll really start to notice another big problem with the movie. There's so much fucking slow-mo. Listen, I don't hate slow-mo. Slow-mo can be pretty fucking cool. But not when you use it every other second. This fight would be like half as long if you just had it play at normal speed the whole time. And this constantly happens. I would bet my left kidney that there's slow-mo in at least half the scenes. By the way, if you try holding me to that bet, you're gonna have to pay for the kidney. I heard those things go for quite a bit, so I want my cut. You might say that goes against the definition of a bet. Counter-argument, I need money, I want money, I like money, and kidneys aren't cheap. So Kora's about to be shot, but this guy Kai shoots the other guy. Kai's basically the shadiest motherfucker in the universe, and he straight up admits that he's the shadiest motherfucker in the universe that only cares about himself. But he tells them that he can help them find the rebels. And because they are completely brain dead, they go with him. But he also tells them that he knows some other people that might want to help. From here, the next hour of the movie becomes a series of side quests to recruit more characters to help them. Now, that doesn't sound that bad, right? Yeah, well, problem is that we're already an hour into the movie, and now the next hour is spent just collecting more main characters because I guess free wasn't enough. And the director's cut then also sprinkles in some extra scenes cutting back to the not Swedish village and how they're preparing for the big fight. It is a slog to sit through. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna gloss over a lot of it, and also skip all the Swedish village scenes because they also don't matter at all. First, they go to a desert planet to free some hot guy called Tarak from, forced labor, we'll say. But he's honorable or something, so he pays his debts. But the greasy fat guy that, basically owns him says that if he can ride the big bird outside, then he's free to go. The bird doesn't want Tarak to ride him. Vine boom. But then Tarak says some cutesy shit and the big bird's like,
I don't understand a word you just said, but I like the way you said it.
So he lets Tarak ride him. Vine boom. Then we get some Disney Channel bullshit as he rides the big bird, then he's off to go help Kora and the gang. Also, the greasy guy gets murdered by the big bird. Next, they go to the Minecraft planet, where industrial redstone farms have taken over. They meet Nemesis. Yes, that's actually her name, but before they can recruit her, she's called away because a big spider lady's kidnapped a kid. You see, because of the pollution, the big spider lady's eggs can't hatch, so now she murders other people's kids for vengeance. In the regular version, we just cut to them going to fight the big spider lady, but in the director's cut, we get an actual scene of them meeting Nemesis. We get a pretty good fight scene between the big spider lady and Nemesis, except for when Nemesis decides to take, like, a good minute to show off her totally original laser swords, trademark. She kills the big spider and then monologues about how revenge is bad. Because, salty? What the f is that? Lastly, they go to Pollux to find General Titus. By the way, Pollux fucking sounds like some sort of STD, but anyways. They find General Titus, but Titus is a bit of a pussy nowadays, so he doesn't want to help them. But Kora goes, hey, remember when you used to be awesome? And he goes, yeah, I do remember when I was awesome. Want to do some vengeance? Yeah, sure, I've got nothing better to do. Then they're off to find the rebels. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I genuinely don't remember how they learn where the rebels are. Hey, come on, give me a break. The director's cut is 3.5 hours long. So they find the rebels, led by Devra and Daario Bloodaxe. No, I'm not kidding once again. Those are their actual names. Devra tells them that they can't afford to risk their entire army just to save one farming village, but her brother's heart isn't completely frosty, so he decides to help them. He also takes some volunteers with him, and they go off to save the village. Then we get a little scene of Kora and Kai just talking about why they're both doing this. For Kora, it's guilt, while Kai says that he thinks he once had honor and that maybe this way he can get some of it back. And I honestly like this scene. There's just one problem. It comes completely out of nowhere because there hasn't been a single scene of Kai and Kora actually bonding. Kai talking about wanting to get his honor back comes out of nowhere because it hasn't even really been established that he maybe once had honor. In fact, I know all about him. The only thing I could tell you about him is that he's shady. That's it. Outside of that, I couldn't describe anything about him. And really, that goes for almost all the characters. We haven't even had one scene of all of them just interacting with each other. I don't know if they even like each other because they never talk to each other. Okay, so editor me here. So while editing the video, it turns out that the director's cut does actually have one scene of the group talking with each other. But I still think my point stands because it's one scene that's only in the director's cut, and well, it's one scene in a 3.5 hour director's cut, so I still don't think that's enough. Also, maybe I'm crazy, but I think there's supposed to be some romantic tension in this scene, but that literally hasn't even been hinted at until now, so if I'm not crazy and that is the intention here, then that also falls flat. Kai does also say that he needs to drop off some cargo before they can go off and probably die, so they arrive at some random port, and then it turns out that shady guy Kai actually has been working for the Mother World this whole time. I know, right? What a totally unpredictable twist. This is the part where I say that I...
No.
Hold.
Wait.
You...
Wait.
So... They get captured, Noble arrives, which by the way, I know I haven't mentioned him much so far, and that's because he's kinda just off doing his own thing for most of the movie, but he arrives and literally just tells us what everyone's backstories are, and when I say tells us, I don't mean he tells the characters. I mean, this scene literally just exists to tell us everyone's backstories. Kai tells Gunnar to kill Kora, cause then maybe he'll have a chance to make it out alive, but he instead frees Kora and kills Kai. Then we get another big action scene, and you know, it's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, it's kinda fun. Daario sacrifices himself, and this also falls flat because I know all about him. You introduced him like 10 minutes ago, and you didn't even give me a single other scene with him, so I don't care about him. I don't care that he dies. I don't care. Kora eventually corners Noble on a floating buoy, and he reacts like an NPC. Kora kills him, and then she and the gang return to the village, and we see the robots also there. But oh, you thought we were done? There's one more scene of Noble getting resuscitated because I guess he's a cyborg or something. So I was right about him being an NPC. He talks to Belisarius and tells him that he's found Kora. Belisarius tells him to find her and kill her, and that's it, that's the end. So originally I was going to give you a big in-depth plot recap for part 2 as well, but not a lot actually happens. And also halfway through I just started skipping through it because I'd already watched the regular version once, and this shit's nearly 3 hours. Not to mention, there's just not a lot of changes. It's mostly just the same movie, so I don't really feel bad about skimming through it. So the gang arrives back at the village. Kora then Gunnar. The director's cut actually shows and then Kora goes back into backstory mode because she hadn't told us all of it. Basically, the king of the Mother World kind of wanted to stop doing war because his daughter, who's magic or something, had a healing effect on him. But Belisarius was like, "Kami!" So he betrayed the king and killed him, and Kora killed the princess. Belisarius then used the power of racism to make Kora the scapegoat, but Kora escaped and crash landed in the Swedish village. Then we get a in slow-mo farming montage because that's just the most exciting thing ever. Then Noble finally arrives, and the second half of the movie basically just becomes one big action scene. Kora eventually kills Noble again, and the village is saved. Hi, editor me again. So I completely forgot to mention that Gunnar fucking dies. Yeah, Gunnar fucking dies, and I just forgot about it completely. Because the movie did such a shit job of making me actually give a fuck about his character that I just straight up forgot that one of the main characters dies. Also, we learned that apparently the princess is alive. Now, I don't like these movies, but I don't want to make it seem like they're complete dumpster fires. They're just mostly dumpster fires, like 80% dumpster fire. But there is stuff I like. I already talked about how good the movie looks, so I'm not going to talk about it again. But I also really like the music. It's pretty good. Not much else to say about it. It's just pretty good. I also like the fight scenes. I really like the final fight between Kora and Noble in part 2 because the ship's crashing, so the entire cargo room is tilting. Also, they're straight up using lightsabers. Okay, I guess they're supposed to just be superheated swords, but come on, they're fucking lightsabers. But the scene's pretty cool, and in general, the action scenes are pretty good. Aside from the slow-mo. The slow-mo is god-awful. The director's cuts also have a lot more gore in them, and maybe I'm just
deeply disturbed.
But I kinda like that. I also honestly kinda like the world building and the lore. Like, I actually have a good idea of what this universe is like and what the cultures of all these different places are. Yeah, it's not the most original stuff, but at least it's decently well developed. Which is not something I can say for other parts of these movies. Honestly, if you just kind of turn your brain off, then the movie can be pretty fun. Like, if you just treat it like a Fast and Furious movie or something, then you'll probably enjoy it a lot. But, well, that doesn't change that there's also a lot of dumb shit and a lot of stuff that I don't like about it. So let's just move on to all of that. So, the best way I can describe these movies is imagine you're eating a plate of dog shit with a little bit of chocolate mixed in. The director's cut is like if you also threw in a couple mints, but the plate also got 20% bigger. Like, yeah, the director's cut is better than the regular version, but it's still not good, and it's even longer. And I'll remind you that the director's cut of part 1 is 3.5 hours. And while some of the stuff added is actually kinda good, a lot of it just isn't really important, like the overly long scenes, plural, or this weird titty robot. Context. Basically, after Kora and Gunnar and Kai leave the bar, the camera lingers on this robot that has titties and nipples for some reason. Does she do anything? No. Does she even show up again? Nope, not even in part 2. There's literally no reason why they put so much focus on this robot when she literally doesn't matter. And while it's worse in the director's cuts, there's still plenty of stuff in the regular cuts that just shouldn't be in the movies. Like the Anthony Hopkins robot. There's a lot of focus put on him, but he really isn't important to anything, really. It's even worse in the director's cut because they add all these extra scenes for him in part 1, but nothing really happens in them. It's just a lot of Anthony Hopkins monologuing that doesn't matter to the plot, so why are they there at all? It feels like Zach Snyder just threw in every idea he had without really thinking about how all of it would actually fit together. And that's a problem because it takes time away from actually important stuff like, you know, developing the characters. And for me, that is the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the characters. None of them are actually developed. Like, I couldn't tell you anything about Tarak or Titus or really any of them. Nemesis wants revenge for her dead kids, I guess. That's it. Kora wants revenge on Belisarius for using the power of racism against her. That's it. Gunnar is nice and wants to f Kora. That's it. Kai is shady. That's it. Noble and Belisarius are just like evil and power hungry. That's it. What I'm saying is they're all boring to me and I couldn't tell you anything about them. And there's also just no chemistry between any of them. They're all willing to die for each other, but why? There isn't even a scene of them just talking with each other until the second movie. And that scene mostly just ends up being an exposition dump for all their backstories. And most of them could genuinely be completely cut out, and not only would not really change anything, it would actually make the movie better, especially because you're racing against the clock to get an army together, but you're also just doing a bunch of side quests, and they only get a total of 3 fighters out of it. Like, sure, I can see Titus being useful because he's supposed to be a genius military tactician. He never acts like it, but whatever. But Tarak and Nemesis could be completely cut out and nothing would really change. Honestly, the characters are all so boring that the most interesting character is the king. And we only see him in a couple flashbacks. He probably has the least amount of screen time, right under Belisarius, but he's the only character that actually feels somewhat developed. He starts out as just this warmongering asshole who just wants to expand his empire, but after the birth of his daughter, he starts to question his actions. He starts to feel guilty for all the atrocities done in his name. And then eventually he decides to end all their wars and abdicate because his daughter had forgiven him for all the terrible things he'd done. But Belisarius sees the king as just a coward running from his mistakes and hiding behind his own daughter, which I think is really interesting. That's a complex character that isn't just clearly a good guy or a bad guy, that you can see as maybe this heroic, altruistic man trying to make his empire better, or you can see him as this coward who, rather than face his mistakes, would rather abdicate the throne to his own 10-year-old daughter. Like, that's interesting. That's a complex character that I'm not entirely sure, like, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. That's interesting. Kora also says that the king saw Belisarius as the son he never had, which makes Belisarius' betrayal a lot more interesting. Too bad they don't actually explore that though. The king is a minor character that isn't even really that relevant to the plot, but he's so much more interesting and fleshed out. Belisarius is probably the only other character that's even remotely interesting, mostly because he decides to adopt Kora despite being, you know, a complete psycho. Like, that's so interesting to me, especially because in the director's cut, when Kora has the gun pointed at him, he tells her to set him free. And Kora wonders if he only adopted her so somebody else could share in his pain. Which really makes me wonder if maybe deep down he knows that he's a monster and wants to be free from his own evil. Too bad the movie doesn't actually explore any of that. Belisarius just ends up being the most standard, pure evil bad guy who's only out for power, which sucks. Because you were this close to a really good villain, but instead he's just the Baron from Dune without any of the parts that made him fun to watch. It doesn't help that he's barely actually in the movie. Really, I think the best way to describe these movies is wasted potential. I can see how these movies could have been great. I can see some genuinely really interesting stuff here, but the movie doesn't actually do anything with the cool ideas it has. Really, the best way I can describe my feelings towards these movies is with that one Rogue One meme.
We were on the verge of greatness. We were this close.